us any relief.
Your
So
Honor,
it's essentially, not to put too fine a point on it. So Mr. Greer, I'll really finish off on that. We're late starting anyway, so. I'll have to go back and take a look at the counter statement. See just exactly what is in that.
And then obviously we'll have to refer on that.
But we'll get to that. I just didn't want you to think that we weren't going to address that in the very near future.
appreciate it, Your Honor.
So, let's see, was Mr. Barrett?
Yes, Your Honor. May I inquire?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Mercury, following up on where we finished before the break, and we were talking a little bit about the VV pads and your experience in this area. In your opinion, Ms. Mercury, why are the VV pads necessary?
Objection, Your Honor. The question is vague. Necessary is, again, what they're indicating is testimony as it relates to how to interpret California law. And whether it's necessary in general or whether it's necessary in California law, two very different questions. And we would submit that this court should only be interested in what is required or what is necessary in California law. Necessary in the broader purpose, it's not a relevant question in this court to entertain.
Well, there's this about it. The legislature writes the law. Courts apply that law and interpret it, and that's what we're going to do in this case. I think I can separate out statements that really don't, that would be in the nature of a statement of what the law is or should be. I'm going to overrule your objection and say that some of this evidence is helpful to the court. For example, it's interesting to me what you would actually obtain from a manual recount of the VV pad.
Your Honor, if I might join in the objection.
How helpful that would be to anyone. That's just a little unclear unless you know these computers and understand all this.
I think, however, that, Your Honor, the testimony that's trying to be elicited is outside the scope of the expertise of the witness. I mean, if she wants to talk about how these data programs operate, that's fine, but what the need is for those in terms of the context of a political election, I don't think this witness is qualified to do that.
Well, it appears to me that the theme of the testimony would be that at some point in time she became interested in this subject and was aware that the DRE, maybe even this can be kind of shaky. And as a layperson, it's a little hard to follow this. But let's just say hypothetically that the DRE downloads, electronic information in a chip, like you have in your camera, whatever, which is called an image or something like that. I want you to know I've read this. I can't remember most of it. That can fail. There's been indications that can fail one way or another. I'm going to overrule the objection. Go ahead, Counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, Ms. Mercury, why are the VV pads necessary?
The VV pads are necessary because, as I had started to say before the break, when the voter is voting, it's all part of the way that they're voting now with this new system. That they're casting a vote that is recorded both electronically and on paper. And the necessity for the VV pad is to allow the voter to independently verify and validate prior to the time of them casting the vote that record on the paper is how they intended to vote. Because if they just see the screen, even though they themselves may have contributed to preparing what was on the screen, they don't know whether it went to the card or the cartridge or the hard drive or whatever it's storing it on. They don't know that when it stored it correctly. But when they do see the voter verified paper, and in fact it's accessible too, so that people, even the people who have vision problems or language difficulties, they also can access it and see it with assistive devices. So when they verify that, then that's validating just prior to their casting that that's how they intended to vote. If, in fact, it's part of the VVPAT system and the DRE system, that if they see on the paper something that is not how they intended to vote, and we know of at least one instance in California, in San Diego, where a voter claimed that what was printed out on the paper was not how they had intended to vote, they can raise an objection. And before they actually cast that vote, they can actually object, and they can have that vote, withheld, or, be allowed to raise an objection as to the equipment. So that's one of numerous reasons why the VVPAT is important. But that goes to the general manner in which the VVPAT system is integrated with the DRE system. So it's a part of the casting of the ballot.
Okay, and what is the MBB?
Okay, so the MBB in the system that you have, the E-Slate system that's being used in this county, is it's a magnetic way that the ballot is being recorded. As I was describing earlier, it may not be a picture of it as it might be with a scanned ballot, but it's an electronic version of that. And so what happens is, at the end of the day, actually in the E-Slate system, they're sort of daisy chained together, so there's multiple ones and they're all chained together. So there could be a problem with the transmission of those votes through their cables. They may not be connected together properly. They're supposed to be working properly, but they may not all be. And they're supposed to transmit it to the central. There's a central tabulating system, which they used to refer to as the BOSS in that system. I don't know what they're calling it here in California. But in any event, in that hard E-Slate system, the central system has a cartridge which actually tallies, it collects all of the votes together from all of those separate E-Slate units, the individual units, and that's where the images and then the totals are being tallied from that electronic version of the ballots. It's not being tallied from the paper ballots themselves, it's being tallied from the electronic version. And then those cartridges are then taken from the various precincts up to the county themselves, inserted into another machine, and then those are collected together to make the county totals. So that becomes those MBBs become very important in that they're transmitting that information, which again, may be correct or may have been corrupted in any of those transfers. That is certainly always the case with electronics.
Okay, well let me ask you about that. These MBB systems, can they, hypothetically, based on your experience, can they be corrupted intentionally?
They certainly could be corrupted intentionally. The type that they're using for the hard E-Slate is just a standard type of card, and we know that we can reverse engineer those and perhaps create other ones undetectably that may contain other vote totals.
Okay. Would the presence of a VVPAT help the registrar of voters or an individual conducting a recount determine whether or not there's been a corruption in these MBBs? And if so, how?
Certainly. In the 1%, the canvas, when we do the 1% canvas, the 1% canvas must include the VVPAT count as in a 1% form, as well as a canvas of the scanned ballots. So that aspect of the canvas that requires the use of the VVPATs, and again, that's a requirement, that's there so that it can pick up on any discrepancies that may occur. So at least in that 1%, it's certainly not going to flag all discrepancies, but it could potentially flag important discrepancies, and then you'd be able to see whether you need to go further or not, if there were discrepancies because of defects. Any electronic device, as we know, you can have glitches, and especially with electrostatic discharge, that type of thing, somebody's walking across a carpet with one of these things, and information can go away. So there's various ways in which information could be altered or changed, not necessarily maliciously.